If I'm probably brutally honest, it started to consume my life, as with all of the police on that strike force. Khaled Sharoof backed onto a laneway or a drainage way in Wiley Park. 1 o'clock in the morning in Wiley Park, we'd parked our vehicle up. Tim and I went down the laneway, and you're trying to move along a laneway at 1 o'clock in the morning in Wiley Park and not being detected, but you've got every dog going off left, right and centre. Yeah. So we got our way down to where we had to, and we were crouched down in behind one of the fences, and I know this is going to sound really silly, but staring at us in the face was a couple of boxes of hydrogen peroxide right at the back gate. In very simple terms, I think it's triacetone triperoxide, which is basically a very volatile explosive. It does have the nickname of Mother of Satan. We orchestrated a vehicle stop on the car this particular day, and in that rear of his vehicle was 7,600 rounds of AK-47 ammunition, and I've never seen that much ammunition.
The I Catch Killers podcast was a fresh start for me, as I left policing behind and started a new life. Over the years, we've laughed together, cried, and shared some powerful moments. Welcome to I Catch Killers. Peter Moroney, welcome back to part 2 of I Catch Killers.
Thanks, Gary.
I'm finding it fascinating. You're talking about the work you're doing in counter-terrorism and Operation Pendennis, that we're going to continue on that journey. I got to say, hearing you talk, it just, I don't know, it stirs something in me. I feel like joining the police again and starting the career.
Jump back on the tools, mate, and we'll go again.
Yeah, go right through the whole thing again. But it does have an impact, and there was something in prepping for my sit-down with you today. I looked at and I thought, this is bad. And I'm talking about, and I'm saying this half joking, but you've gone to an ultrasound with your wife for your newborn baby. And I think in your words, you described, I wasn't really present there. I was more thinking about the job I was working on. Do you want to take us through that so people understand how shallow some people are?
Well, in case my wife listens to this podcast, thank you, sweetheart, for your patience. Look, we 2005, so we're coming up my beautiful 18-year-old, as she is now, born in 2005, so first child. And so as we're fast-forwarding around 04, moving up into the start of 05, eventually Pendennis comes to a culmination at the end of 05. So as all good expected first fathers are, I absolutely volunteer to go with my wife to I think it was our first ultrasound we had.
We're in this together, dear.
I've got your back, sweetie. But yeah, so there was a number of things happening with what was now known as Pendennis. Things had started to move very quickly. I think around by about this March-April period, we'd picked up that some of we'll call it the Melbourne cell, had come up from Sydney. And what they were now doing, they'd made their way out to Broken Hill, to a property at Broken Hill under false pretences, in terms of false name, false identity, to go and practice shooting, which we subsequently put forward at the conspiracy trial was basically just training. So that had happened. A number of other things had happened very quickly around the time that was starting to bring about a presence of overtness to their covert acts, if that sounds good English.
Breaking that down, and you've already forgotten the ultrasound again, but anyway, we'll let that go. But this is what's going through your mind. It's beautiful.
I was just trying to explain why I forgot the ultrasound.
No, we'll let you off at the ultrasound. But again, that is the pressure of policing. You need to be absorbed into it. But now you're saying there's overt action. So that's where people are actually going out and doing stuff, gathering stuff. And these are the type of things that, from your point of view, it would greatly raise your concern and the team's concern? Yeah,
you're right, Gary. We had moved from what I'll call this behaviour that could have been interpreted to be something sinister, could have been interpreted 40,000 different ways. And as you know, when something occurs, you always try to look at it, go, well, if one had occurred, could this equal that, or is there an alternate interpretation of the evidence? But cutting a long story short, we started to move to no, there's no other alternate interpretation here. This is what was now factoring in. And that's what was sort of starting to really kick off. And obviously, as you rightly point out, when I went to that ultrasound, it was the furthest thing from my mind. And it started to, if I'm probably brutally honest, it started to consume my life, as with all of the police on that strike force. If anyone ever steps forward and said Operation Pendennis, they ran it, I'm sorry, bullshit. It didn't. It was a team effort from multiple agencies. It was done by several hundred people. Sure, people had some key parts. But it started to consume my life, not only inside of work, but also out of.
Yeah. And the hours you were working, like it's
ridiculous. Yeah. Look, and mate, you know yourself that when things happen, they can happen very quickly, and they can happen for a very long time. So it's really started to heighten around that March, April, May period. Took a bit of a lull in June. It got to a point where ASIO wanted to execute a search warrant. Now, the problem with that for us, from a pure investigative detective sense, is I need evidence. I can't prosecute on intelligence. So there was some great debate around whether or not an intelligence warrant was executed. So this is around June. Cut a long story short, it was. Now, what the policing fear from our side of the house was, look, we had been working these guys now for the better part of 12 months. We have gone to extreme lengths to, in essence, break into their houses, plant the devices, device the car. They don't know about half of the phones that they think they don't know about, that we've got covered. By knocking on the door and going, I'm here for a search warrant, is going to do nothing but send a flag up. They know we're looking at them, and that's going to bury them underground, change phones, change methodology, and off we go and we start again.
And they're those really tough decisions. And I've had it where, a contract killer, we think they're going to do a hit. Do we move now? But if we move now, we've just put the flag up, and
Absolutely,
they didn't know we're looking at them. Now they do, and they'll just change their method of operation. So it's a difficult call, isn't it? And that's again what I find fascinating about the work in counter-terrorism, because those type of calls. But breaking it down, so people, we're talking a little bit of cop talk. Breaking it down is that the moment you execute an overt search warrant on the place, they know they've been looked at.
Correct,
and then they could go underground, possibly still achieve what they wanted to do, but you've got the advantage that they don't know you're looking at them, and you didn't want to get rid of that advantage.
Yeah, we didn't, but the ultimate balance was, and I understand it, is that we can't let them keep going, because if you miss and you get it wrong, then it's catastrophic potentially. I get it. So they moved, and we executed the search warrants and pulled a number of pieces of valuable intelligence. I suppose that I still had part of that traditional investigator in me and said, well, that's all dead and buried. We might as well restart and move on. It didn't falter them, didn't move them, didn't shake them. And they started to, if anything, push harder. So between that period, around that June, July, August period, their overt acts. So what I mean by that is that their movements were no longer were no longer really hidden. They weren't generally still talking on a phone.
Maybe that's because we're looking at it from the traditional, like if you're a crook that's trying to make a profit, if they realise we're onto them, they pull their head in. But these blokes, extremists, and we're going to do this.
You're spot on, and it come down to about mid-August, and I was sitting in the office with Tim Lydiard. Tim's still in at the moment at Liverpool, and a job we were working on a different strike force that we were dealing with at the relevant time, because as you know, you don't just generally do one job, you do a few. And some intelligence had come in around some possible stolen goods and some other issues that had come up. Khaled Sharif backed onto a laneway or a drainage way in Wiley Park. So one of the easiest things for us to do was to go and have a look. We come down the drainage way. So this is about 1 o'clock in the morning in Wiley Park. We'd parked our vehicle up, and we had another young female detective just new to the unit with us at the time. And Tim and I, she dropped us off. So Tim and I went down the laneway. And you're trying to move along a laneway at 1 o'clock in the morning in Wiley Park and not being detected, but you've got every dog going off left, right and centre. Yeah. So we got our way down to where we had to, and we were crouched down in behind one of the fences. And I know this is going to sound really silly, but staring at us in the face was a couple of boxes of hydrogen peroxide right at the back gate. And hydrogen peroxide is a precursor, a chemical that can be used as part of what they call TATP, which is a highly volatile explosive. In very simple terms, I think it's triacetone triperoxide, which is basically a very volatile explosive. It does have the nickname of Mother of Satan because of the sheer devastation that it will cause. And I've sort of looked at Tim and he's looked at me and went, oh, okay, like what do we do with that? And thinking, because the first instance that come to me was hydrogen peroxide is also hair dye. And we started to walk back along the laneway going, do we or don't we? Do we go get it? Do we leave it there? So I said, mate, you shoot off, make a phone call, I'll duck back and I'll just sit with it in case, keep an eye on it. So he comes back. So then what we did was we set about then gathering the evidence in darkness. So we set up the video and recorded the seizure of all that evidence at night to account for why we were there. And we started to walk out with these bottles of hydrogen peroxide, and our supervisor rang us on the phone and said, whatever you're doing, don't lift this hydrogen peroxide, don't move it. So we're walking along the lane, we're at 1 a.m. carrying it in our arms, and I'm thinking, a bit late for that. There was just a bit of misinformation that they thought it had already been moved to the next stage, right. But I went to pains to say this is just hair dye. So we knocked off at about 2 or 3 in the morning. And Derek Shagan, at the time, my boss, rang me about 7 a.m. He goes, unbeknownst to Tim and I, we just did our usual sit rep, found I think it was at the time, 24 bottles of hydrogen peroxide behind these premises. And unbeknownst to us, it sort of fired off like a rocket. And Derek's ringing me going, mate, you got to come back in. What you found has sort of sent us all into a frenzy. I'm thinking, mate, it's hair dye. Because I still was learning about, well, what can it be used for? So we go in and I distinctly remember Gary opening the doors to the office at the Crime Commission and it was a buzz. And I'm looking around going, I must have missed something here terribly.
I always get nervous when I walk into a room like that too.
So cut a long story short, and if we say we started to really move fast, that's when we started to move fast. Up pops another, we're now going to do another warrant. And the same debate was had, and it caused a lot of, probably anger's the right word amongst us detectives, in that you're hammering us. We've just found a nice piece of evidence. We are moving along quite nicely at this point in time. But it was all about disruption. And I get it, and I truly get it. But by disrupting, we're now losing more evidence we potentially won't ever get. That debate raged. Anyway, they executed it. It was dealt with and done. We then started to move quicker, and we picked up Mazen Tuma via the phones, was starting to...
And just getting a sense of this, because I think it's good for the listeners to understand when you start to move quicker. I'm getting a sense you guys would have been working around the clock and just sleeping when you can. It would have been pressure.
Yeah, that, as
sleep under your desk.
As coppers, you always loved that overtime, but it got to the point, it was like, this is no
You're
more.
too tired to put the overtime in.
So we started to really ramp up around that late August period of time, where essentially between that, I'd probably say around that September period, what had happened was we'd picked up Mazen Tuma, was attempting to buy a firearm. Now, we knew LMR, Ballajam were all licensed shooters, and they had their weapons. But what caught us with Tuma was that he had organised to purchase, as they often do, Gary, as you know better than me, talking code. So they talked about 7,500 paintbrushes or whatever it might have been. So we orchestrated a vehicle stop on the car this particular day. And in that rear of his vehicle was 7,600 rounds of what we'll essentially say is AK-47 ammunition, my apologies. And I've never seen that much ammunition.
Well, it's not for a casual shooting, is it?
No, mate, it's very
Start
well put.
War.
It was just, that was photographed. The guys that did the execution of the stop of the vehicle the day photographed, and in it was stacked high. I mean, it was phenomenal. And then again, that added to the angst of, here we go, they are now starting to move. We'd started to also pick up... And
what time frame is that?
This is now around probably that July, August, September. Okay. So it all comes to resolution.
So everything's starting to
go.
And your thoughts of what might be happening seem to be happening with the overt actions and the stuff that you're gathering.
Definitely. So by about this August, September period of time, and I literally mean this, and particularly moving up to November, there was not a surveillance team in the country that was not in Sydney. Yeah. We had them all, from AFP, Queensland Police, New South Wales. We'd pulled
Trust me, I remember.
We'd pulled almost every electronic and every physical surveillance resource we could have, even to different agencies that I can't name, but they come from everywhere. What had happened was that we now started to pick up, because in our views they were starting to heighten, they were starting to basically go, well, you've knocked me off twice. It didn't deter them. It didn't stop them.
So was the thought going through your guys' minds, guys and girls, that didn't deter them? Maybe the fact that we've disrupted them, they're just going to step it up and do it quicker. That would be what would be going through my mind.
You're spot on. It's essentially what it was, mate. It was just simply keep coming because we're not going to stop. So they'd stepped it up, and what we were starting to now really see is the clandestine activity of them. So what I simply mean by that for your listeners is that we had surveillance out on these people. We started to identify they were attending a number of chemical stores and ordering volumes and volumes and volumes of acetone, hydrogen peroxide, nitric acid, all of the ingredients that could be used for making TATP, but not buy this on a small scale. Like, I am talking hundreds and hundreds of litres. But they were purchasing it through either cash, leaving false names, false phone numbers. So when you add that combination,
showing the intent,
it's that breadcrumb's becoming really noticeable now, and everything became exceptionally heightened. We knew they were buying from websites that we had off there when we had their internet off. They were buying eskies, they were buying Bunsen burners, beacons, thermometers. And when you look up how to make TATP, one of the key catalysts to it is you must keep it cool. If it doesn't remain cool, it's volatile and likely to explode. At the relevant time, and I chuckle on that point, because at the relevant time, totally unconnected to our job, the Sydney Police Centre got shut down because there was a young police officer up in Newcastle, unrelated to our job, found a chemical agent of some description and thought, I'll bring this down to Sydney. And when he brought it in and they did a prelim test, it was TATP. And he drove it down in his police vehicle from Newcastle. That could have blown up at any point. I shouldn't, and I don't mean to laugh, but
we can laugh now. You got the word.
It was just one of those funny things that you just think, my goodness. So all of the ingredients are now being purchased. All purchased in fictitious names, fictitious phone numbers, paid with cash. There's no trail, nothing to connect them back to the crime, so they thought. We started to see them buy, they moved off one particular night. Now this comes up November 2, 2005, is 3 days before D-Day. They knew we were onto them. They all gathered and went to their lawyers the day before. And around this time, John Howard had been briefed by the bosses in the AFP. And John Howard, I think he recalled Parliament from memory, and there was a change of some of the laws to do with terrorism that were utilised to assist.
So this is the magnitude of the operation. In their laws change, federal laws, Prime Minister involved and briefed. And I know that pressure filters down on everyone. Everyone's feeling tense. The bosses are getting it from the politicians. The bosses are putting it down to you guys. So it would have been chaos. Yeah,
it was. It was a nightmare. One of our key priorities by now is, as I said, we'd picked up that a couple of them were tradies, but we'd picked up they'd been going to a particular hardware store and they were buying lengths and lengths of PVC piping and capping. And there was a couple of concerns going around. Is that perhaps going to be used for the storage of the TATP or whatever the means? And so we picked up all around this time, all of this is starting to occur. You've got all these chemicals purchased, all these additional rounds of ammunition being purchased. It was starting to gel towards a perfect storm. We had, if I hold New South Wales there and we quickly go to Victoria, the Victorian cells have ramped up. By this point in time, Nasser Bambrika, who was the head of the cell, with an undercover officer, had been out in the bush testing and detonating explosives. We had the Melbourne team had a young offender down there who'd already put himself forward for a suicide mission. So all of these things were starting to stack up. We were in great communication between Victoria and ourselves. There had to come a point where that was it.
Yeah.
No more.
Had to move.
Just had to go. Whether we had the evidence to put them away or not, it didn't matter. We just had to go. There was now too much to lose.
And again, that's the main priority is to prevent the terrorist act.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is, mate. You don't, as we said at the start, you just don't want that to happen at all to anyone. It's around the 2nd, 3rd, 4th of November, and I'd literally, I think, been home for about 4 hours in 3 days, as had everyone that was on the team. Around the clock. We had a briefing at the Air Wing at Bankstown. What we were able to do is, not myself, but some of the team members, was sneak on through warrant, of course, onto some of the key properties and swab some of the door handles and handles to test for chemical agents, to try to understand what was being done.
And again, we won't go into methodology, but all this is happening. You've had bugger all sleep. Yeah. You're sneaking into places. It's not as easy as it sounds. Like there's a lot of planning that goes into going covertly and look at things. So
there was, mate. And
on top of this, Peter, and sorry, I keep interrupting, but I just find it fascinating. Yeah, kept it on the quiet too. Like the media didn't get a hint of it. It was tight. It was tight even within the police. Like you kept it very tight.
Yeah, you're right, mate. It was a real need to know. We're out at the Air Wing and we had the swabs come back, and there was a preemptive test done that matched TATP. So there was a what they'll call a positive test for it. So point being, someone's manufactured it. What we also got told, though, is that there are a number of other chemicals out there that might provide a false reading, that it could simply just be, and I'll make this as an example, chlorine, but it does constitute popping up as a TATP agent. So this is around 2nd, 3rd November. Given that D-Day come on the 5th of November, the core crux now was find the TATP, if that's what had been made. So again, as you know better than anyone, mate, you trawl through the volume. This is where the New South Wales Crime Commission analysts and the policing analysts come to their forefront. What they've got to now do is go back, and they've got to look for a needle in a haystack. And what they've got to do now is pore over telephone interception information. Was there a suggestion? Cross-referencing that to what we call their cell site data to track where they were. Overlay that against the tracking data out of a car to say, did this car stop anywhere for 5, 10, 15 minutes that it should not have stopped at? So we're trying to find their hide. We hadn't found it. The briefing started to go up almost every few hours, all the way up to the Prime Minister. And I remember Derek saying to me, we were sitting out in the streets of Ingleburn at about 2 a.m. and it was bucketing rain. And he said that we just simply got to keep going. We'd picked up, one of them had hired the freight containers, a freight container. I was sitting in the middle of this paddock in Ingleburn, and I'd never seen rain like it. And the problem with it was, and we had a warrant to get at it, but it sat in the middle of an industrial area. All of the factories around it were working, and we took a team of about 4 or 5 of us, because we can't just go and open it up. We're covert at this point in time. We're trying to find the explosive devices. We had to trudge through this paddock, and it was in pitch black, and unbeknownst to us, there was a couple of horses in the paddock that we didn't realise. And this is all sounding comical, and I don't mean it to, but these are just things you can look back and go, what on earth was going on? So we made it, the techies broke into the shed, but empty, nothing. Yep. And it was becoming demoralising in the sense and concerning, you know. And as I said, and I'm sure my wife will testify, it just consumed our life and my life, I should say. By this time, our daughter had been born. My wife's trying to contend with the first child, and I'm just trying to contend with what we're trying to do and be supportive. But it got to the point where we got called in. I arrived at work on the I think it was about the morning of the 5th of November. And we got told, that's it, there's no more. We've got to move to an overt stage now and make a number of arrests. And we've got to hit those arrests simultaneously between, I think it was around the 12 or 13 targets in Melbourne, but also whilst we only arrested 9 up here, we had about 10 or 11 targets that we had to arrest. Now, one of the premising points leading up to that arrest phase was there was a meeting between several of the key targets. They met in Lakemba. And again, by this point in time, we were running 24/7 surveillance and been running for nearly 3 weeks with every conceivable surveillance team this country has. One surveillance chap in particular went well above and beyond, and the targets went down a laneway, and he went down a parallel fence line and got in proximity and could hear them. And if they looked over that fence, he was gone. By this point in time, they knew we were watching.
Yeah.
They just did not care. And then from that point in time, that's give or take around that morning of the 4th or the 5th, apologies, the memory's a bit hazy after a while, we got told no more, time's up, start to plan the execution phase of it. So we organised to do them all simultaneously. Now, if you think about this, we had 9 targets in New South Wales. So I had, not myself, my apologies, our team had 9 surveillance teams on each, and we're moving into the arrest phase. So we were on them 24/7 because we needed to know where they were going to be, obviously to execute the warrant simultaneously. So we went out to a briefing at Parramatta out at Westmead, where other than us, something like 400 other police had basically been given about 3 hours notice, I think, to say you will be at Westmead at this time for a counter-terrorism operation.
Major operation, I remember it.
And we're not telling you anything else. And that's all they got. And it was an eerie silence. You know, they gave a presentation, and I like all the others on the team, I'd been awake now for a while, and I was standing to the side of the room, and the commissioner, or Dad as it was then, addressed the room, and they went through a presentation of the targets we were looking for, where they lived, that some were armed. By this point in time, we knew they'd purchased more rounds of ammunition. We knew the day before the execution, several of them had been at the range practicing. And they knew it was coming, and we knew they knew it was coming, and it was just going to be a matter of time.
Genuine, like the build-up for that, what you've just described there, there's a genuine concern, like the risk factors are high. You go, and the logistics of hitting all these places at the same time it's remarkable that you can achieve that. There's so many moving parts. But you're dealing with now what I think it's safe to say is extremists, like with what they've gone. They don't react the way normal crooks do.
No.
If a normal crook is going to be caught, well, I'm going to be caught. I'm not going to make it worse for myself. There's a risk, and I was watching it. I think it was a Sunday night program that had a story on it.
Yeah.
Your old man was talking about it, and he was talking about doing that briefing, and he was genuine in saying, "I hope you're all safe when you go out there and do that." And he's looking over at you, going, "Shit, my son too." But it was hardcore.
Yeah, look, and you know, it was one of those defining moments in your career, as if you can say that. And we moved to the point, we knew surveillance had them. We tagged them. We all knew where they were. We let them go to bed that night. But the problem was, which is, you know how hard it is with surveillance. It's really easy to lose someone. We lost Balajam and we lost LMR. So I was assigned to the target of Omar Balajam, was who I was responsible for, and Nick Reed. Nick's still in a great guy, great operator, and he was assigned LMR to take care of him. We had a briefing, so I had a sub-briefing at Green Valley with the team that I had to deal with Omar Balajam, and we had the State Protection Group, which for your listeners are the heavily armed police, the tactical teams that do the doing, that allow you and I to sit back and just come in and take over the arrest. We had that briefing. Omar Balajam, known gun owner, had been out shooting a couple of days prior. We had him purchasing rounds of ammunition leading up. So it was about 2 a.m., 3 a.m. on the morning of the 7th, the 8th, that we were told, get ready, because this is what time we're going in New South Wales, and you're going to go in Victoria as well. And at about 2 minutes to 2, the tactical leader came up to me and said, Pete, in New South Wales, for your listeners, the tactical team must be given authority to use special weapons and tactics, normally by the Assistant Commissioner in the region. And there's got to be extenuating circumstances for why they can do that, as you know. So he come up to me and said, we don't have authority to do the execution of Balajam's warrant, so we can't do it. I won't tell you what I said in response, because I knew it wasn't his fault.
I know, but then it falls back on you.
Yeah. Again, what do we get? About 30 rounds a year at a range. So that was okay. Look, what do? We had no choice. And I remember, this, I know it sounds silly, but we'd set up, got the phone call to go, and we'd moved our way down the fence line and sent a team around the back. And as stupid as it is now, and I can laugh at it now, but I'm coming down to the front of Ballagham's house, trying to stay in the shadows, because we knew he was armed. And I ducked down on the right just for a moment, and I thought what I saw was the gate move. So I went down a little bit lower, and it was just some bloody bird on top of this gate that I almost crapped my pants and thought, oh, bloody hell. So let's just get this thing over and done with. So anyway, knocked on the door. He wasn't there, so he was missing, as was Alamar. So the hunt then come. Where are they? All the other warrants executed. All the other parties are at home. None of them. There was one chap whose name escapes me, made for a run for it down the corridor, dove on his bed, and the guys got him in time. But in the bedside drawer was a loaded firearm that we would say he was going to go for. There was a lot of talk about leading up to around don't go, don't get arrested. You'll just do what you got to do.
Booby traps or
whatever.
All those things would come into play.
What I was saying at the start, about a day or two before, Gary, was when I was watching the news, and counter-terrorism operation in France had run, where the police had stormed the building looking for their people, and then you see this footage of half this building blow up, and all those cops were killed. And you're sitting there going, oh, okay, don't worry about that. Let's just get on and try to do what you got to do. You know better than anyone.
Well, you focus on it, but just that little twist, and I've had that happen before, where you can't get approval for the tactical police for whatever reason, and you're concentrating. You get your head round. I've got to grab this bloke. I want to speak to him about this, and you got all that floating. Your detective side of it. And then with a decision, you're then got to switch on the tactical, and you've got to clear your head for that moment, and then go in there and effect the arrest.
Yeah, it was. I remember before we went, I moved off from Green Valley Police Station into a car park for a bit, and a mate come down and just said, how you going? I said, man, what the hell are we doing? All this amount of work about to go. And I remember sitting there and saying to him, do you think they know we're coming? Do they realise in about 10 minutes their entire life is about to be ripped up and turned upside down? He gives a very practical, in a very polite way, don't worry about that. It's all on them. But I know that's a strange thing to say from a detective's point of view, but it was also like they got no idea what they're about to get hit with.
Well,
so.
I think the way you've described it, Peter, it becomes part of you, doesn't it? Like you sitting back now and you're looking back at it and you can describe it, but when you're involved in it, it is the focus of your life. And you're not sleeping. You try to sleep. You catch an hour here, an hour there. Sleep under the desk. Wherever you could catch an hour's sleep. You've got all these things ticking in your mind, and you're probably not operating at your sharpest because you're so worn down. So, it's just an amazing story, and I think you're articulating it very well. The pressures that come, and you're the first to put your hand up. It's not just you, the whole team, the whole squad definitely was going down this path. Yeah,
so we hit the door, and actually we didn't hit the door. That's a fallacy. We knocked on the door, believe it or not. We knocked on the door. The wife come to the front door, and you got to remember what we're there for. It's about 2 a.m. and we knock on the door. What seems like 10 minutes, which was only literally 30 seconds, probably no answer.
Yeah, you're worrying what's going to happen.
And your ears prick up and go, any movement, any sound. Can anyone hear anything as he come out the back? Because at this time, whilst we knew our surveillance team had lost him some hours before, we couldn't discount he hadn't also come home. Nothing, another knock on the door. Rob George, a good mate of mine, is also now out. I said, mate, knock again. And knocked again, and then you have that wait, anyone, any movement. And slowly the wife come to the door and opened the door, and obviously the police went in and he wasn't there. Fast forward probably about 5 hours, so you know what it's like, you've been up for a long time. When we started to search his house, the wife had brought out a dirty nappy within a plastic bag. But there was something about it that just said, and having a newborn may have helped this, was that there's just something not right about that plastic bag. And when I looked at it, I said to her, can you bring that bag to me? And she goes, it's a shitty nappy. What do you want this bag for? And I said, well, why is it all wet inside? And then when we looked at the nappy, part of it was burnt. And And you know what it's like. You just go, that doesn't make sense. Why is that? So I said, as you get to do them when you're a sergeant, to a constable, can you open that bag and go through it? He rightly told me what I could do with that. So I said, no worries, I accept that. And I opened the bag. And inside it was a screwed up note, partially burnt. And we unwrapped the note. And it was basically a set of drop instructions. And what we mean by that was that it was Westfields Liverpool. It was clearly identified. It was basically a diagram to say, and I'll paraphrase here, you come up, park your vehicle here, leave the keys, front left-hand wheel. Do not move. You'll see me come up. I'll give you basically 2 flashes of a headlight. Come over, leave that car. So we find this, about 5 a.m. in the morning. And you think, well, what's that? Have they dropped the vehicle off at Westfields?
Is it loaded with
what's it loaded with?
Yeah.
What's in it? So we were dealing with the search, and again by 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and probably I shouldn't have done it, but the gun gets heavier, after it's been on the hip for a while. So I took it off and locked it in the front drawer, the police car and front glove box, sorry. And Derek Shagan rang me. Derek Shaggers is in the POC, the Police Operations Centre, where the main command post is.
Police Centre in the Surrey Hills.
Yeah, Surrey Hills. And he said, surveillance has got Ballajam. He's just been dropped off near the Green Valley Mosque, but he hasn't gone to the mosque. He's making his way up in the general direction of the police station. He goes, you got to move, go and get him. And I said, yeah, okay, yep, no worries at all. Went and got Rob, who was my offsider, and said, we've got to go. Surveillance have got him. He's making his way up the rough general direction of Green Valley Police. And he goes, all right, let's go. And I said, yep, no dramas. He said, we'll take his car because mine was parked in. And he goes, where's your gun? I said, oh, it's in the glove box. And he's looking at me like, go and get it. Yeah. I said, oh, yeah, okay. I know that sounds silly, but you know what it's like when you're exhausted and you're tired, you go.
I know, you're losing your motor skills. You're not
what
thinking
do you do?
clearly. Yeah.
So we jump in and lights and sirens, and none of us, neither of Rob and I, were very familiar with Green Valley. And we're making our way up there, lights and sirens, and Derek rings me again, says, you're en route. I said, mate, we're on the way. He goes, righto, he's just coming up over hills, carrying a backpack. We don't know if he's armed. I said, that's okay. And I've turned around in the police vehicle and went, one ballistic vest. And I looked at Rob and I said, mate, there's one vest. And I said, since you're driving and you can't put it on. But it just happened very quickly, and we made our way, and then Derek rang me back again and just basically said, mate, he's started shooting. How far off are you? And I said, oh, literally just coming up the hill, 20 seconds. So it was such a slow motion event because all I know is he started to shoot, and I said to Rob, mate, he started shooting. Just come up over the hill.
Time stands still, doesn't it?
It does, mate. It goes so slow. And we come up over the hills, killed the sirens, killed the lights. And we're in an unmarked four-wheel drive, so you probably wouldn't have. And it's not a conventional unmarked police car. It's decked out so you don't pick it. And we come up over the hill, and we'd seen a Green Valley police car propped across the road. The lights were flashing, no police. And we said, prop the car. And we got out, and then we come up around it, and Ballajam was laying in the gutter, had been shot in the neck. But what had subsequently happened is the Green Valley police vehicle had gone down the road, fully marked, turned, which Ballajam had seen it. And as they come out, he turned. As they started to step from the vehicle, he turned and fired, hitting one of the officers in the hand, and they'd returned fire and hit him in I think it was around the throat region. Subsequently survived. From there, we then, I remember sitting there distinctly, and the old man rang me because he was in the Police Operations Centre, and all I had heard was that an officer had been shot. My brother worked at Green Valley at the time, and my brother come around the corner, and just to see him was a breath of fresh air. And said, yeah, we're right, all good. We put the officer that had been shot in the hand in the car, and it just made sure he was all right. There was plenty of police to look after him. And as you know, when that happens, the amount of misinformation that now floods, you know, there's all of a sudden there's another offender. He's gone through this yard, this house, and it's like, slow down. Like, what are we dealing with?
And we know because we've been in those situations, but for the public to understand, you think, well, can't it be all clear and concise like you see on TV? But it's not. It's reports
not,
of
mate,
this,
yeah.
that, and it's escalating, and you're trying to process it in real time. And
Adrenaline's pumping, and so that was dealt with, and I thought, okay, good. I rang my wife because, you know, there was a bit of press around it at the time just to say, yeah, look, there'd been a shooting. Well, It wasn't me. It's all okay. And the officer had just been struck in the hand and he was okay. Went down the road. I fueled up the car this time because we're getting low.
At least you've learned something.
And I was sitting there and Derek rings me again and said, where are you? I said, well, just at the shooting. He goes, right. He goes, there was another target that I won't name because he wasn't arrested. He was the person that, if I rewind slightly, had dropped Ballajam off at the mosque.
Okay, yep.
Surveillance still had him, and he is now at Westfields, Liverpool. And I went, okay. And I hadn't told Derek about the note yet because we just didn't have time. And I said, mate, look, we'd just found a note partially burnt that tried to be destroyed. These are the broad instructions on it. He goes, where are you? And I said, well, I'm at wherever it was, Green Valley. And I had a very young plainclothes constable with me, Don, and I forget Don's surname, Geddes, I think it was. And I said, mate, get in, we've got to go. We're going to Liverpool. And he goes, what for? I said, "Man, just get in." And we got there. Sorry, I'll take that back. Derek come and got us. He was all but there. He goes, park your car up, get in. And we go into Liverpool. Derek's on the phone to the tactical commander saying, this is the intelligence, this is information. Surveillance had followed this individual up into Westfields, first layer, first car park. And he tucked off to the side, hopped out of the driver's seat and laid down on the back seat.
Yeah.
So surveillance is stacked up in the car park. A female who we didn't know, because the surveillance operative come up and spoke to us when we got there, said a female was driving the vehicle. She's gone into Westfields. We have a team on foot. But he is laying on the back seat of that car. And a dumb question came of why? And the surveillance operative was like, fuck it, I don't know.
Just telling you what I'm seeing. Yeah.
So we said, okay, made a call to the tactical team, and they were about 30 minutes away. And Derek's ex-tactical himself, big fella. And
Derek spent a lot of time in the TAU, so he would have been a good conduit between the tactical and...
And he just turned to me and goes, you're right, we're going to go. And I know this sounds dumb. I said, go where? He goes, we're going to take the car. We're going, okay, yeah, no dramas. And we had Don, basically like it was his second day, sitting in the back seat. And I turned around and said, Don, you're right? He goes, yeah, right for what? And we explained what we were about to do. He goes, yeah, okay, no worries.
I'm just going to arrest a guy in a car that might be a bomb, but don't worry about it. Come with us.
But we... and as you say, Derek, wealth of knowledge, and he knew exactly where to go, what to pull up and how it was going to unfold. And so did it successfully. It was all okay. There was no problems in the end. And he knew when they were travelling up into Westfields, he could see Polair was tracking him. So he thought he was just going to lay down and hide. Subsequently, he was arrested. And then, mate, to wrap the day up, went back to the shooting, eventually went home.
Did you go home? What have you been up to today, Dick?
Not much. So we go home, and my in-laws were down, and a good friend of mine had come down to see us, spend some time with us. And I literally walked in on about 6 o'clock. It was right on time for dinner. And we all sat down, and Johnny, who was there at the time, hadn't known what was unfolding. And I literally sat down, mate, and had a beer, and I fell asleep at the table with my knife and fork in hand, and my wife had to wake me up and goes like, what are you doing? So that was it. That was sort of the end of the day. And then, as you know, mate, absolutely better than anyone, then we had to build the brief. Yeah,
it's not like high-five each other and you all walk off and celebrate. The real work starts.
Mate, and then from 2005 until 2009 when they were convicted, it didn't stop.
How many got convicted, Per?
Mate, we charged 9 in New South Wales initially with a conspiracy to commit an act of terrorism.
Could you identify what they were going to do, what they were targeting?
Great question, mate. No. No, so we couldn't nominate the target, and we always wondered whether that was going to be an issue. Subsequent to trial, we had 4, I think from memory, except pleas to different offences.
Conspiracies.
And they, whatever it might have been at the time, they pleaded to that. And 5 took us on at trial. The trial the voir dire, what a voir dire is for those who don't know, there's a legal argument sometimes before a trial starts to say, hey, what evidence is in, what evidence is out, and all these things. The voir dire itself went for 9 months. The committal, which is it's
a long legal argument.
A long legal argument. And then the trial. The trial went for just on, I think it was on 15 months, but came back. All 5 that fought it convicted. 2, maybe 3 now are. Sorry, my apologies. 2 are out. The ones that took a plea to the lesser charges, they are clearly all out. Khaled Sharif is dead, and 3 remain in custody but due out the next 2-3 years.
Mm. It's an amazing investigation, and it's still, as far as I know, unless there's other ones that we haven't heard about, it is one of the most successful counter-terrorist operations that we've had in the country.
Yeah, look, it's lovely. They're lovely comments and stuff like that, but you just go, in some ways, it's your job, isn't it?
It is, but these are, and this is where, and I really like to flesh this out on eye catch killers. It's a type of commitment from not just yourself, but other people, like in that investigation team, all of them, hundreds of people or whatever. It takes people like that sort of commitment. These things don't happen. You could have just said, oh well, I'm tired, I'm knocking off it. There could be little mistakes like that. But it was everyone got in and did something and made a big difference. That changed the course of our country. If something like that went off, we've seen the impact that just this weekend has, and it just makes everyone think, oh, what's going on? Yeah,
the weaponry and the number of chemicals they had, and we quantified it in terms of the amount of explosives that could have been catastrophic. You're talking hundreds, if not thousands, killed. And one of the things that a lot of the public don't understand is they'll often see, as you say, mate, on movies that you make the arrest, you high five, and they all plead guilty. But mate, as you know, that
the battle starts.
That's when the hard yards start. And that's when it gets on. And throughout that entire building of the brief phase, and that when it's all ramping up, everyone's there. But when sometimes the hard work comes to be done, it's like...
Oh, Peter.
Crickets.
Crickets. You've been there. Okay, so you've arrested those 10 men. You won't need your strike force anymore,
No,
will you?
you don't need that.
No, we'll just put it all together
and
ourselves.
As you say, mate, and then we, there was times during the committal where I had a couple of medical episodes and passed out at home and was put in hospital. And I tell that only from a sense, mate, that I've got a lot of mates out there that think that because you're in the cops... you're immune, and I was probably one of them. And I passed out twice at home. My wife had left to work, and I had our youngest at the time, and fell through the shower screen, was hospitalised. And when I say, and I just say that, just so the guys out there and the girls out there that's still working, we love the job, and I get we love the job, mate, and you know that better than anyone, and it's very rewarding. But for Christ's sake, look after yourself first. When I say the job doesn't owe you anything, I don't mean that disparaging. What I mean is you'll do your utmost and you'll give everything to the job. But at the end of the day, your health has to be a priority. I was fine in the end. And I dealt with an arrangement of mental illness for a very short period of time. Again, I'm not embarrassed to say it. I went through my own headspace and my own demons. But with great mates, great friends, great support, you're able to work through that. And again, I just simply probably say that to those that are still out there or those that are just leaving, don't ever do it on your own. Yeah. Is probably where I'd leave it.
I think that's really good advice, and I've had people come in, detectives that have put their hands up like that and said, well, maybe I should have asked for help at the earlier stage. But we push it, and I think it's part of the psyche of a cop. Like, you're there to help people. I don't need help. I'm a cop. I'm not going to... And
well put.
The pressure of those jobs, if you step away, the person you're beside is going to have to pick up the slack, and I think that drives us. But no, that's really good advice, Peter, and thank you for your honesty on it, because it does come as a cost, and I've been there, done that, and sometimes you hide it, but you don't hide it really well. You just bury it, and it'll come back It'll come back to bite you at some stage. But you've also made another point, and we've talked off camera or off audio about when you're out of the police. When you're in
Yeah.
the police, you do think the world revolves around the police. What you don't want to talk about anything else. You're talking about policing. You become fixated on it. It's just that tunnel vision. You're a cop. You're on this investigation. You're out. I'm out. There is a world outside the cops, isn't there?
Oh, there is, and well said, that. But it's not until you can get out and look back in.
Yep.
I remember when it came a time for me to make a decision to go or to stay. It was, Gary, it was the hardest decision, mate, I'd ever made in my life. For me, when I joined, probably no dissimilar to you, I joined for a career.
Yeah, it was your vacation. That
Absolutely.
was your life.
I joined for my life. All my university studies was geared at that.
Yeah.
All my management studies were geared at that. I was going nowhere. I was in. End of story. And that's how it was. But once that decision was made to go, and as you beautifully put it, is you sit in the cops going, when you go to a dinner party, people go, "What do you do?" "Oh, I'm in the police." There's a bit of it. There's an identity attached to who you are.
That's your persona.
And when you get out, I remember when I first got out and you'd go to, barbecue party, whatever it might have been. "What do you do?" And it's like, I'm not really sure. And it was like, it was a slap in the, when I say it was a slap in the face, it was an eye-opener because now I'm out and I have absolute love and respect and admiration for anyone who's still in. I would not be where I am in my life without the New South Wales Police, without the training I got, the education I got, the great friends that you make. So I owe a lot to the police. But when you're out, you're out. And there is that old saying that mate, is that, nothing more X than an X. But I rarely think about the police anymore. I don't need them, so I don't think about them.
Yeah,
and it's such a different change.
I understand that, Peter. It's taken me years to get to that point. I've said to you, occasionally I'll see a job on there and I think I wouldn't mind a piece of that. Like I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind being back in on that.
You miss it, don't you?
And the adrenaline, the excitement, the thrill of the chase, that type of stuff. But the more you move away, and I think I don't like it where I see people that have bad memories about their time in the police, and we've all got friends that look back and they're a little bit bitter or cranky about it. It just helps me to look back, even though my career ended in such dramatic, controversial circumstances. I look back and I loved every day I was at work, and it challenged me. It taught me. I grew. I changed as a person. What saddens me now, and I hope people listen to these conversations, listen to the passion that you just talked about your investigation, that police are having trouble attracting people to join the police. Like, I don't know what's gone wrong. Are we looking at police a little bit differently? Are we more questioning in society? But you can have a job that just ticks every box, and there's such a diversity of work that you can do.
Yeah, and I think we spoke it briefly off camera, didn't we? That the job that it is today is not the job that it was.
No.
In essence, when you and I joined, I think things, like that. God, every job you do now, everyone's got a camera. Everyone's pulling this out. Every step's being scrutinised. Heaps of pressure. Yeah. And then, I think the average career now of career's not probably the right term, but the average length of service now is about 4 or 5 years, I think, from memory, and it just changes.
You're only just learning. I'm 34 years. I learnt every day I came to work. I learnt something. Yeah. Like it's. I hope it gets to the point where people start thinking it's a worthwhile vocation. You're a public servant, but you get to do things like you talked about all the countries you travelled overseas.
Yeah.
I've done overseas work in the cops. So many different things and different experiences that you get that.
Yeah, and look, the skill set that you pick up within the police, there is tons of work out there for the coppers, ex-coppers, and the skill sets you have. The ability to talk to someone, the ability to investigate, the ability to write statements, the abilities to deal with crisis and events and risk management, stuff you do every day that is so, and probably no different to the Defence Forces. There's so much capability you have that there is life after it. But the hardest thing for me, and for whatever it is worth for any of the listeners that are ex, it's just that transition from stepping out to becoming who you want to become.
Well, you lose your tribe. I've spoken to
It's a good point. It's a good
I've
way.
spoken to military guys, and they very early after I left the cops, and I wrote an article about a group called Swiss 8, and they were combat veterans, and sat down and talked to them, and what they were saying resonated with me, that when I was in the cops, I was valued for these skills. I was respected for that. That was my tribe. Then I left the cops, and you've left your tribe, and you're sort of looking around and go, where's my tribe? But, it's I love speaking to people that have had a great career, tough time in there, good times, bad times, but look back on it with fond memories. And I got to say, listening to your story about counter-terrorism, I want to start it all over again. Like, I don't know, if anyone's out there listening and thinking about joining the police, I would always say aim for homicide, but counter-terrorism,
Thanks, mate. It means a lot coming from someone like yourself.
No, I appreciate it. Now, since you've been out of the police, you've been, running some big stuff and doing some interesting stuff as well. What are you up to?
Mate, pretty much the easiest way I explain what do I do now is everything I did in the cops, but for more pay. So, so what do? We got when I left, and as you rightly said, such a loss of identity. But my dad had left about 3 or 4 years earlier and set up a company called Nemesis Consultancy Group. So I moved in there with him, and I said, look, I joined the cops when I was just on 18.
Yeah.
I said, mate, I can't hammer a nail into a bit of wood. I don't know what to do. So I just did what I do, investigate. So we now do a large number of investigations for government agencies in no range, Gary, from your workplace matters, your bullying, your harassment, sexual harassments. We do, unfortunately, still do a lot around child abuse, child sexual abuse matters. I've been doing a couple of bodies of work now, predominantly around how educational facilities can basically prevent, prepare, respond and recover from what we'll call a hostile threat or an active shooter. So that's seen me in and out of America for some time now.
I think the fact that preparation, you need that preparation. Just it mightn't happen. Let's hope it doesn't happen. But if you're prepared for it, it makes it better. And I think that came out with what happened at Bondi. There's talk that we've just got to look at what the protocols are and how we're going to deal with situations.
Spot on. And I think what's going to really focus under that spotlight will come down to what training was given, because it's. If you think of that analogy about the World Trade Center, right? No one would have ever thought as a foreseeable risk two planes will hit a building. But I can give you a guarantee now that a lot of that's now brought into planning. It has to be now known that a active armed offender, and whether that offender's armed with a baseball bat, a knife or a weapon, it's a foreseeable risk. And now that's unfortunate, but now we've got to deal with it. We can't bury our head in the sand about it.
Yeah. No, very true, very true. You've also written a book. What's the title of the book?
Yeah, it's called Terrorism in Australia, the story of Operation Pendennis. And look, and you've written as well. It's one of those things, you sit down and go, who's going to read this?
My greatest fear was that the book was going to be on those trays out the front for $1.50 buy one,
get two. Mate, sending me a couple of those, don't you worry. Still, so yeah, you're right, and you hit that perfectly, because it's a vulnerability that you go, oh, what if this thing tanks?
Yeah.
What happens if it's out the door? But look, I really enjoyed writing, and it wasn't a chore because I just simply told a story. It's quite a simplistic story about the story of Operation Pendennis and probably a little bit that led up to it, and a bit of the personal side in terms of what you go through. But it was good. I enjoyed it. But again, it was just one of those things that for me it was the doubt I could write one. Obviously, with the help of the publishers, absolutely, and the editors. But yeah, look, I'm proud of it.
But
so.
I like the fact that you're proud of it, and I'm sure you would have had some conflicting thoughts where am I talking about this? What are other people? Someone's going to say, but that didn't happen. This happened, or whatever. It's your account of the versions, and it's a fascinating story. And I think when everyone sort of looks back at it, it's something that should be celebrated. It's good police work. It might motivate other people to do good police work. I look at it that way, and no, full credit to your career
Thank you.
What you've done post career, and thank you for taking us deep into that world of counter-terrorism, because we don't hear a lot of people talk about it. It's come out and talk about it. And you're not revealing methodology, but just understanding the differences. And the thing that I take away from this whole chat, Peter, is that I'm looking at the crooks differently. Like my crooks that I go after, they're not going to, oh, well, if he turns up, I'm just going to blow us all up. It's a completely different mindset, isn't it, these extremists? And that's where it makes it scary.
And I think what's adding to the difficulty of that now is not only are we dealing with, let's call them religious-based extremists, but now we've got the right wing, and from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing and from the guys I talk to, that's not going to be a pretty sight either.
Right, so it's coming from the other side as well.
Yep, thick and fast.
Okay, interesting. Well, thank you for your career.
My pleasure.
And let's pass out the thanks to all the people that worked on that operation, the men and women and the people that are still doing it in counter-terrorism now. So I think they're doing a great job, and they're doing work that we don't hear about. They don't get the glory of homicide detective locking someone up. Quite often the work that counter-terrorism people are doing that no one hears about. But they're out there doing some good stuff.
No, thank you. Thanks so much for your time too, Gary. I appreciate it.
Enjoy that chat. Cheers. It makes me proud to be a retired police officer when I speak to someone like Peter Moroney. The way he comes across, you can see he's so passionate, he cares, he's intelligent, he's everything that you want a detective to be. And the job that he was talking about, which he was part of a team leader, but working with a whole range of people in counter-terrorism, full credit to them. There's a lot of pressure in that area of policing, and they stopped something that if the people that they were going after got away with it, the consequences could have been devastating. There's a lot of pressure in stopping terrorist activities, and it's good to know that people like Peter have set the standard.